Hello everyone, my name is Hannah Deering and I am the president of the HCI Student Group. We are very excited to have you here today. We have brought in our panel of elite colleagues in the UX Professional Association. Dan Nebbe and Keith Kmet come from Principal, and Amy works here at Iowa State in Human Sciences, College of Human Sciences and Web Design. So if you guys want to take a moment to kind of introduce yourself, how you maybe came to be associated with UXPA, and just kind of about your experience.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Great. Again, my name is Amy Kern, and how I came to user experience, it's been a long path for me. I would have to say it started here at Iowa State. I graduated from LAS with a degree in English, and at the time it was called RPC, Rhetoric and Professional Communication. And to me, the root of everything usability and user experience is the rhetorical triangle, knowing yourself, knowing your audience, and how you're going to get that message across. So really it started here. But my first profession was technical writer, and so you're thinking, where does that come in? And in the mid to late 90s at Principal, when we were doing technical writing, we were already moving to online delivery before we knew what the internet was. So we were already working in an online environment. While I was there, I learned HTML. That guy at the end, Dan, taught me HTML, and he just the first few pieces of code, creating a paragraph and maybe making something bold, and I was hooked. I thought it was just the coolest thing. So immediately, and I don't know exactly why, but immediately I started following usability. Back then it was all about usability, and so I was following usability gurus. Jacob Nielsen was one of them, and back then Linda Weinman, also known as lynda.com, was very much into the graphic design end of usability, and so a lot of those people were doing a lot of conferences and seminars, and that's where I learned things like that. And I think at Principal, I believe in my department, I was the first person to ever conduct usability testing on one of our websites, and that was really cool. Chip manual, I don't know if you know. Anyway, and so in subsequent jobs, I continued to conduct usability testing on applications, websites. I also did instructional design, writing, and also consulting on learning management systems. I helped businesses build their learning management systems sort of from the ground up. And continue with the website design, and right now I'm doing website design, as Hannah said, here at Iowa State College of Human Sciences. So the college it's sort of like LAS, it's got several umbrella departments, so we're still not done converting. And through this job, the last usability or user experience related thing that I've been doing is testing on an online scholarship application that we're using right now. We've gotten great feedback on it. So.
Hello, my name's Keith Kmet, and I'm a certified usability analyst. I work at Principal Financial with Dan, and I got a certification through now it's Human Factors International, which provides certifications now for not only usability analysts but also for user experience analysts. So there's a CUA tract and then a CXA tract, and so my background is I am also an ISU grad, but I graduated from the journalism school, and my emphasis though was in visual communications. I took one HTML course that they offered. It's probably back in 1998 when the internet was, I was still on Netscape version 1, moving to Netscape 2, just getting off of Mosaic, if you know your history of your browsers. So, when I started at Iowa State, we were still using Telnet and green screens to check our email. So, basically, been doing web design and development for about 15 years now, and got into user experience about 6-7 years ago. Dan and I had met at a usability event. It was kind of, I was curious about it, and I realized I worked at a marketing agency for 12 years before I just went to principal last March. So I've only been there just about a year. And but I worked at a marketing agency. It was a startup agency for 12 years. First started as a developer doing graphic design and kind of just simple coding things, but quickly realizing, throughout learning about all this technology and how the back end works and how the front end works, realizing that there was a big gap in the marketing industry for understanding who our audience was. A lot of the times agencies at the time would just take orders from the client. The client asked for this, do you want fries with that? And then it was just like you would just spit and turn out websites. You didn't really give much thought about what content and what, how it was structured, what kind of impact the audience was, and you just kind of hope that it showed up in Google. Things like that. So all that's evolved, and I've been helping try to drive that. Even today, there's still a lot of companies that still don't get that, and so that's one of the things that I'm now the president of the UXPA here in Iowa, and so it's kind of our mission to make sure that we're driving home that, hey, this is what user experience is about. And then I'm also dabbling a little bit in what the customer experience is about, which is basically a new corporate suite level. If you've ever heard like a CXO title, we don't have one officially at Principal, but there are people who are kind of dabbling in that themselves, and it's inside of a big corporation, it's hard to get the maturity level of that up. So it's a good and exciting time to be in the user experience field, and also focusing on usability and things like that. And user research is also going to be a good thing, but it's a good time to be going out in the field and trying to get jobs in this area, because it's a very niche thing, and there's lots of demand for it.
I'm Dan Nebby, also an ISU grad, and like Amy, I sort of cut my chops in the English program here. I think it's Business and Technical Communication now. It was RPC way back in the day. Now I use a lot of HTML. I kind of cut my teeth in markup doing writing my papers on mainframe terminals here at Iowa State, and so that's how I first got started doing markup. So when HTML came along, it was kind of like, oh hey, I've seen this kind of stuff before. This is easy. Anyway, I'm sort of the corporate lifer of the bunch, I guess. I've been at Principal for 16 years. Didn't start out intending to be there that long, but that's how it's worked. So I worked with Amy several years ago at Principal, and currently working with Keith. And my background is English. I love the wordsmithing, charts, graphs, and all those kind of things that go along with it. And the technology's been a lot of fun too. I'm kind of envious of you guys because you have all these educational opportunities to get into usability and human-computer interaction and all those kind of things. And we were just starting to learn about those back when I was in school in the 80s and 90s. So you guys have a great opportunity. I love coming up here too and seeing all the virtual reality and augmented reality and haptics and all these cool things that I go and sit and think, well, how am I going to use this on a financial services website? And how am I going to get somebody to pay for it too? And I haven't worked through those problems yet, but we'll get there someday. So keep doing the cool stuff and inspiring those of us who are in the corporate world, and we get to do cool stuff once it kind of becomes more mainstream. So I think we're probably just going to let you guys answer questions. I do want to give a little bit of background. So I'm sort of the corporate lifer. Keith worked in a marketing firm for 12 years, so he's worked with a ton of smaller companies and done lots of different things. So he's had a lot of variety. Now he's at Principal, so he's been there almost a year. No, it's just different. And Amy worked at Principal, and then she went on and worked for another good-sized company, maybe not that big, but and then did a bunch of consulting before she came to Iowa State. So she's kind of been through a lot of different things too. So hopefully we'll bring some different perspectives, just because we've traveled different paths to where we are now. But we all love the user experience field, and hope we can provide you guys some insight into the careers and that sort of thing.
So if any of you guys have any questions, does anyone want to be the brave soul to ask the first question? If not, I can. Any takers? Okay.
How many of you are in the HCI program, or are you from all over?
So, HCI. How many are from the College of Design or Industrial? How many of you guys from engineering? So, pretty good mix. Sorry, I didn't send the email to them. All right. What would you guys consider an essential tool or technique that you use on a very regular basis that people coming into UX really should have a firm grasp of before they get a career in it?
I'll just start off by saying I'm not going to mention some cool tool, so if that's what you're expecting me to say, I'm not. I'm going to go back to the basics, what I said before, knowing your audience. That seems so simple, and it's unbelievable how many businesses get it wrong. I remember when I started out in this, in some respects, a lot of things haven't changed. I'm more from the drag people kicking and screaming to do testing or to run surveys or focus groups. But I remember when people, developers especially, started understanding that user experience was a thing, and so then they would start talking the talk. Oh, our users don't want that. I remember, and it's like, how do you know? When's the last time you actually talked to someone that used your product? So I'm saying just talk to people that are using your product and be open to feedback.
Totally agree with what Amy has said, and kind of you'll probably hear that as a theme to the answer to that question as well. Essentially, there's a big oversight a lot of times over user research and doing so. Simple tools like Google Analytics or Twitter and watching trends in content. Because I have a journalism background, you'll hear me talk a lot about user experience and content. A lot of people get hung up with the usability aspect, which is can they find the button, can they perform the task you're looking for, where user experience is meant to go a little bit beyond that and ask will they click the button, why are they going to do what I want them to do, how do I persuade them. There's a little more persuasion techniques to it. Sorry. And so that being in a marketing firm for 12 years, it was all about learning design from a persuasion aspect. So persuasive design, persuasive content, and things like that. That also now Google and all the search engines, they've picked up on that, and they prefer that over just flooding your website with a bunch of keywords. So focusing on user research and using, just free tools out there. There are so many companies that don't take advantage. They don't know how to mine through Google Analytics at all. And so they could, I guess a recommendation from all of you is, hey, Google's got a free course to let you become Google Analytics certified. You can get an individual certification. It costs $50 to take the test. Get certified in Google Analytics. It's something to put on a resume, but it also says, hey, I know how to set up reports to actually mine the data, to understand your users, to actually get to know them from the how they're using your website today, and then you can take that and build a better design or enhance something and things like that. So that's one tool that you could look at, and also, like I said, it never hurts to say, hey, I've got a certification from Google. Everybody's going to go, oh, what's that about?
Yep, totally agree with those guys. All right, totally agree with those guys. I guess I'm going to say sketching has been a great tool for me. And, you know, I don't mean doing some fancy sketch, but taking 30 seconds to a few minutes to just put an idea or several ideas down on paper. It's a great way to communicate the design, and also where I find it even more valuable for me is thinking through the design. And maybe you guys do that digitally. I know Keith does things more digitally than I do, but there's something about just putting a pencil on paper and you know, sketching stuff out that helps me think through the design problem. And I come at that. I'm a horrible artist. I can't draw stuff, so to speak, but I can sketch boxes and labels and buttons and, hey, put an X, picture's going to go here. That kind of stuff. And so sketching has been an invaluable tool for me.
I would second that with the visual language. That's one of the most valuable things I think I learned at Principal. That's one advantage of being at a large company. You get all kinds of training. Visual language, I don't know if you were there when we did that. I do have a degree now in graphic design since then, but at the time I did not. And it's not that you're a good artist, it's that you can quickly learn, and now I actually do this now quickly in Photoshop, but versus like wireframes or whatever. But whether you're just sketching it out by hand or you're in Photoshop or some other program that you like, the more you do it, the faster you can do it. So then it really truly becomes part of your language, and it just imparts your message so much faster than trying to describe something to people. And they will start using it like that, you know, click on this button that you sketched out here. So I would highly recommend that. Just, you don't have to learn, you know, I don't know where visual language came from. I don't know what company that was from. You know, it doesn't matter. Just get used to sketching things out and presenting them to people and not being embarrassed that you're not the perfect artist.
Has anyone thought of a question?
My name is David Hoffman, and I got a pretty long introduction, so bear with me. So I'll be graduating in May, and I'm planning on starting my own business soon after I graduate. I got to get situated first. And my degree will be in software engineering, so more than likely I'll be doing a few web pages for clients to start the business. And I've been to some very horrible websites where I go to their main page and it's like, where do I go next? You spend 5 minutes just trying to figure out what they want you to do. So my question for you guys is, how do you avoid that trap? What might seem reasonable to me might not be obvious to the customer or the consumer of that website. So what can you do to not fall into that trap of having a horrible website?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing to do to avoid that is get out there and do some research. I mean, you can sketch something out and say, hey, what would you do in this situation? And kind of do guerrilla usability testing. You're this kind of student and you want to try and get a scholarship. Here's what you see. What do you do? Or you can interview people, look at web stats. There's all kinds of ways to get data about users, whether it's qualitative data or quantitative data, but find out who your users are and what they do and what their needs and wants are. And if you clearly understand that, then you're going to know the types of terms that they use, so you know what labels to put on things, what your links should say. And so that will get you off to a good start. I mean, there's still all kinds of design things to do, but at least then you have the right building blocks to build a site for that audience, or those audiences in a lot of cases.
Along those lines, let's say if you're starting with a brand new website and you're you don't have any analytics really. So the only thing you can really do is look at other design patterns and try to, like Dan said, do some research on what are some successful design patterns to try to keep your design in check. But also, there's psychology research out there that a lot of people overlook, and we use it all the time in user experience, is, simple psychology studies that say, for example, if you give people too many options, they'll actually choose none. Like they'll just freeze up and choose no options versus if you give them everything. So if you ask users, if you go out and talk to people and say, hey, what do you think? Do you like this on the website? Would you like this on the website? They'll say, yes, I want it all. Give it to me all. And then when you show them that on the website, they're like, oh, this is terrible. I'm just going to avoid this. I just went through that where Google Plus communities just came out, and I'm kind of big into Google Plus, even though it's not big yet. It will be eventually. So Google Plus communities came out, and I'm a moderator, co-moderator on a user experience research board there on Google Plus, and I wasn't the guy who set it up. I'm working with the guy who actually set it up, and he immediately had 8 different topics in there, and he said, we're not really getting people to do anything. And I was surprised that he was a user experience research guy, and I said, well, isn't it obvious? We have too many topics. And so we narrowed down the topics, and now people are starting to, I noticed a bunch of other people signed up, and they're starting to use the topics more. So it's simple little things like that, but there's a lot of other studies outside of just design that you need to look at to understand human behavior. It's really about understanding how people think. So other things I use are things like if you're doing a brand new website, you try to come up with like a user journey map where, you identify an audience. You might create a persona or a bunch of personas depending on your audience, and try to identify what is it they're after, what tasks are they after, and then maybe what kind of experience they're hoping to have. You're taking your best educated guess, and then testing hopefully will validate your guesses.
Okay, I have 2 things, and we're following sort of in the same philosophy. And again, so I'll say this general philosophy thing that you don't want to hear because it's boring, and then something more specific. So the first thing is my mode is to ask questions, and people will tell me over and over again, you ask really good questions. And I don't care if I was sitting in a classroom, for some reason I would speak up and ask the question that everybody was dying to know the answer to. To the point of, though, you have to be not afraid to ask stupid questions. That's just the way that goes with the territory. And I remember sitting in with a developer at ITS Shazam, and we were talking about an application or ATM application or something like that, and I was new to them. And so Shazam is the electronic funds, all that. And so their product goes into ATMs, and so I was asking questions, and she said, blah, 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 for the bills. And I'm like, my mind just totally went blank. Bills, what do you mean bills? Why would there be bills? And she was like, the money. And so you had to be, so sometimes you're just chomping at the bit because you saw something that's really cool and you want to implement, and this is your chance, But you kind of have to get beyond that and start asking those questions and not be afraid. So for example, this last website, a little website, financial counseling clinic, that we just rolled out today. When I talked to those people, they had, I hope nobody's here. They had a hideous site, and they had, including these like flyouts. I don't even know if you call them rollovers, but they were. I don't know how they were coded, but they weren't working most of the time. And I'm like, get rid of that. But you don't say get rid of that. You say, what's going on here? Well, that was really important to them to show the different services they offer, because any student actually, just a FYI, any student could go to a financial counseling clinic and get advice on a lot of different things. And so I just did something different instead of just, just on my own. This is hideous. I'm getting rid of it. Well, no, we're going to rework that now. The second piece of advice is to broaden your skill set. because all of us have our zone, and we know what we're really good at and what we would like to do 24/7 or for most of our job. But I mentioned Linda Weinman before, and I'm not exactly sure what she's got out there on the way of user experience, but here at Iowa State, we have a free membership to that. Take advantage of that. I used to pay for that when I was on my own, did consulting. I actually paid for that. It's so helpful. She's got all kinds of stuff out there. So if you think you're lacking in graphic design, that might be one of the things that you would address. Other than information organization, I'm pretty good at like navigation and hierarchy. There's some basic rules. You would not use a dark blue text with a red background. You know, that's basically how they do 3D, is with red and blue. You'd be crazy to do that. There's some basic rules. If you're not sure, if you don't think you're, a graphic designer, you think that's not your strength, go out to lynda.com and check out some of that stuff that she's got. That's something you can do right now. So everybody, we all have stuff that we can work on, and I'm always working on maybe 2 or 3 things that aren't really my forte, just to have a broader skill set.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Colin Ray, and I am new to the HCI grad program this year. I just graduated here from the electrical engineering program. My question is, in the past few years, there's been a huge revolution in mobile computing power, and so I'm wondering how, the proliferation of smartphones and tablets and stuff has changed your profession.
I'll probably be the most qualified to answer that, since I just did a mobile usability test here in Chicago in November. So mobile obviously is huge, as Colin alluded to. And because we're all, human behavior doesn't change on how you perceive certain things, even though it's on a screen versus a phone. Types of things. So your psychology doesn't really change that much. It's just more of what you anticipate as far as how you use gestures and things like that. So it's impacted our field a lot because there wasn't a lot of research behind it. So all of a sudden, we've had 20 years of research to look through from human behavior and things like that. So when mobile broke out, either your company forked the money over to start doing the research to try to help you understand how users are going to use these devices, and then you would make applications and things like that to try to help it. But there wasn't a lot of research up front, so that's why right now, even now, a lot of corporations, for example, at Principal, they're still trying to figure out, what are users really wanting. We kind of know what they need just based on interviews and talking to them and things like that, but from a financial perspective, there's a lot of people that don't trust, demographically, they don't trust doing banking transactions on their phone yet. So how much does the business, gonna put money into it if people won't use it? I mean, they're very cognizant of a Generation Y and the younger group, but even then, they only expect certain services. They don't expect everything, and so it's finding a balance of, by default, a lot of companies will just say, "Oh, we just need to take our entire website and put it on the phone," and it's way too much, and it's near impossible to actually do, and so, our usability testing that we did in November was all about altering the navigation to go away from the drill down where you're just click and slide and just drilling down, and that hierarchy drilling down, and doing it more almost like a Facebook type of navigation where you're able to just slide out a menu, jump around to different sections, and we have so much navigation going on. The irony is our application actually doesn't do much right now, just because there's a lot of, from a financial standpoint, there's a lot of regulation around what kind of transactions and things you can do in the financial institutions. So you have to be very careful around those regulations. So a lot of our stuff are just here, you can view your account, but you can't make a transaction or anything else. And some of that's coming. We're getting it all approved. So we were testing a little bit of that, but it was really funny to hear people's reaction. They said, when's this coming? You know, to our usability test, they were like, when is this coming? Because they actually thought that the app had more features just by adding navigation, or like a different navigation, even though it actually we're still only view-only screens. We heard multiple times that, wow, it's just more feature-rich than any other financial app I've used. And I was like, they do know it's view-only. They can't even like submit anything. And they said, yeah, I wish my bank did this, and I wish this. And we were just ecstatic to hear those types of results, but all we did was add navigation. And it was just funny. So, you know, you can learn a ton about your designs by usability testing. But yeah, mobile, I mean, right now we're discussing responsive web design and how do you get that, you know, at Principal, you know, we're talking about legacy systems, COBOL systems that, you know, they don't have the service layers that are designed to serve up content like in the blink of an eye. We're talking millions and millions of transactions. You know, they're trying to keep computers cool on multiple floors and things like that to do this processing. As the markets change, our accounts are fluctuating the whole time, and like the general proportion of that big data, most people can't even get their heads around, and that's why a lot of companies like that won't move as fast. Where if it's a startup, you'll see them roll out, you know, they'll have version 4 of their mobile app, and it's because, well, you know, you look at their web page and it's like either a parallax single page, you know, with 4 or 5 different sections, or maybe it's only a 5 or 6 page website. That's easy to change up really quick, you know, when you're talking a website with, you know, 700 pages on the front end and then thousands behind a secure login, you're just not going to roll out as fast responsive web design. But they recognize things like that, and they're moving towards it. It just takes a little bit more to move that. But as far as how you guys get into the mobile area, it's really just using the devices and getting familiar with it. But you'll be surprised at how, if you're very technical oriented, you'll be surprised how many people don't use the same types of gestures that you use every day. So you're just going to have, it's really right now, there are a few things out there that help with the research to tell you what's the best approach for mobile. But I mean, we're coming out with flexible you know, devices and things like that. It's just, the game changer is it's going to be hard to keep up on, and the research is not keeping up with it. It's just really hard. So you're really just up to you might see a pattern or two that you've seen once before. You might kind of mimic that or make something what you think is better and then test it, because you're going to be doing your own research. Nobody else is really going to have the research to support if it's going to go. So you just have to test it with your audience. But it's at Principal, the mobile team in particular, they've moved to an agile development pattern, where most of the other projects are still waterfall or more iterative, but mobile moves so fast that they've just jumped to user stories and doing the agile methodology. So I got to be involved in helping them convert to agile the last 6 months that I've been at Principal, and so that's been an exciting time as well. So, but it's fun and exciting, but when you're working on a mobile project, there's all the other projects, they're just not as fun. So
Testing. Okay. Hello, my name is Eduardo Rubio. I come from a psychology background, and my question is a two-part question. I want to know how important it is to be design/developer hybrid if you want to secure a job in the corporate world, and also if you want to be a freelancer?
This is just my opinion, but very few people can be a designer and a developer and write content. You know, not everybody's going to be a Da Vinci. And that's the comparison you hear, and people will write up these job descriptions, and they want somebody to do everything. And the thing is, if you're going to do great user experience work, you're going to make a design that really works for the users. A lot of times that adds an awful lot of effort on the part of the developer, and if that's you, then you're like, do I really want to put the work in to do this great? So you're kind of fighting against yourself trying to do all those different roles. So there's, there's certainly some risk to doing that. Some people can do it and do it very well. I don't believe I could. I would always be fighting against myself of, how much work do I want to do and do I have time to do? So definitely some risk there. Yeah, you'll want to take that into account. But if you're going to, be a one-man shop, then whatever work there is to do, you get to do it. So I guess I would recommend that maybe you find at least one other person that you feel like you can work well with, but that has complementary skills to yours. So I'm a horrible artist, not a graphic designer, not a great developer. So if I'm going to start a business, I'm going to look for people who are really good in those areas. And they don't have to be great at writing or information architecture or whatever, because I'll take that role. So definitely look for people who have complementary skills, even if it's a different business and, they can throw some stuff your way and you can throw some stuff their way, but look to partner with people.
I agree with Dan. I do believe that you almost kind of have to pick if you're going to be more of the design focused versus coding. There is a big trend right now to use things like Bootstrap or Foundation or other things to do design quickly, but using frameworks in code and designing with those frameworks, you're still using somebody else's design. You're actually more development than you are designing. Even if you alter it, you're still using their style sheets and their, you're relying on some of their design elements. So you're not 100% designing your own unless you just totally overhaul it, but then why would you use a framework? So it's becoming easier to say, hey, you don't have to know as much code and you can just design, or you can be a strong developer and not have to worry about design as much in the user experience field. But there are a lot of user experience professionals that don't write any code at all, and they're very successful and they talk to a lot of people. They also refer to themselves as user experience strategists because they focus on the strategy of user experience, which is more of that consulting, rather than saying, here's how you write the code. They say, this is what's good. This design. Well, they won't even design it necessarily. They'll just basically be really good critiquers and help you test it, help you critique it, and tell you if it's going to work or not, and then give their stamp of approval, and then the company goes and builds it. So all they do is come in and consult and tell you if that design's going to work or not, but they don't just tell you from their opinion. They actually back it up with research. And so there's just lots of different avenues. So if you're looking to freelance, though, I do dabble in my freelancing as well. I have 15 years development experience. I started out in PHP, HTML, and all that, and so doing a WordPress site, not a big deal for me. But a lot of times anymore, when I'm doing that type of thing, I do a lot of design for my day-to-day, and I'd rather just buy a theme and just focus on the content, focus on the pictures, focus on the wording, and focus on, you know, SEO and other things to help the user experience, rather than worrying about, you know, what's the header look like, what, you know, content placement and things like that. I mean, you kind of have to pick and choose what your battles are going to be as far as that goes. And then along those lines, something that you may notice, one of the key ingredients, I think, for user experience in general is just great communication. You have to be a good communicator yourself. You have to be not afraid to stand up in front of a room full of people and tell everybody how wrong they are about, you know, assuming the users. I literally was in an argument with, you know, 20 people yesterday in a meeting because they wanted to usability test the wrong audience. They said, this is the audience we want to test. And I said, it's the wrong audience. We need to test this group. And they were like, well, but this is the one we want to test. And I said, well, if we test that group, we're not achieving anything, and you know, the likelihood of failure is going to be worse. And you know, now I've got to convert, you know, this whole group, this whole room full of people. You've got to come up with arguments that are fact-based, not just because I said so or because this is, you know, it's just my opinion. You've got to come up with facts and know why, and be able to say why that argument, you know, you've got to be able to say, and you know, if we do this and this and this will be the result based on this research or based on what we've done in the past or things like that. So it's not just a hey, do you like my design type of deal, and oh yeah, I think people will like that anymore. It's, you really have to be able to back up your arguments, and that's one of the big things when people call themselves UX designers anymore. They've taken on that title and tarnished it because they actually don't do any research or any fact, anything. If you ask them why they designed it that way, they're just like, that's because I liked it. And it's like, oh, that's nice. But sometimes that worked and everybody liked it. But when your business is, you know, pumping tens of thousands of dollars at it, and they want it to work, and they want it to work right, and they want it to work to meet the business needs. So communication and being able to really connect with people, you no matter what, you're always going to have to convince people to do the right thing for the users. It's like our number one job. So.
Okay, more of the same. I guess I had three things. My skill set started out in writing. I can do both technical writing, which sounds boring, but what's awesome about technical writing is it's cut to the chase. You know, the question you're always asking is, so what? Who cares? And I like that. I can also do marketing writing. So depending on the website, you know, both of those actually come into play. I'm very good at the information architecture, analyzing things, and then along the way I picked up a degree in graphic design. And always throughout the years it was sort of like, you know, I'm not a programmer. Should I try to be a programmer? No. And it's the same thing as these guys have been saying. You get to a certain point where you know it's just a waste of your time. So my advice, you know, being a consultant for a number of years, go out and find yourself a partner, as these guys have been saying. Embrace collaboration. I know sometimes you think, you know, I've got this great idea and I don't want it to be polluted by other people. Collaboration is your friend. Okay, so I'm just going to throw that out there. Get a partner. Find customers that appreciate that a significant website or application is a team. The people that you work for should understand that one person cannot do it all. And another piece of advice I might throw out is, and you might not want to hear this, is yes, if you want to be on your own, that's awesome, but maybe to start out your career, it wouldn't be a bad idea to go into a bigger place and be amongst a group of your peers. You learn so much from one another. So before I came here, which is about 3 years ago, I was a contractor consultant for about 10 years. And one of the reasons I came back to be an employee is because my experiences were just getting to the point where they were just not rich enough. They were not, I was not growing enough. I wasn't getting those wonderful projects that you could really dig into, learn from one another, or possibly I know nowadays it's asking for a lot, but there might be a budget for you to learn a new skill. So that's something to think about. I don't care whether, my husband's an entrepreneur, and that's the way he started out. He actually put in a number of years in his business, working from the ground up, learning everything, and it just made him so much better person, small business person. So that's my advice.
So I was about to spend at least 5 years in industry before I actually stopped that and went full-time for my own.
Yes.
My business plan.
That's smart.
Save it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ian Wilson. I'm senior in industrial design, and I was wondering if you guys could explain the difference between interaction design and user experience design, because I can't seem to figure that out.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of talking about this next Friday in Des Moines. For the UXPA topic this month, it's what's the difference between user experience and usability, which is similar with interaction design. So interaction design kind of falls more into that usability type of role, where you're looking for user interaction with elements and then user experience. So usability is a subset of the user experience. User experience is about, well, usability is about, like I mentioned earlier, can you find the button? And that's kind of interaction design as well, where you're designing interactions, be it on a mobile or a website, but you're thinking about maybe a task that the user needs to perform, or you're trying to drive them to some type of call to action so that you can get their information so that you can try to sell them something. There's a little bit of marketing behind that as well. So you're focused a little bit more on the usability aspects, even though they call it interaction design. Usability really kind of encompasses interaction design. But then user experience is really more about, in simplistic terms, about how they feel about the whole interaction. So it's more around, trying to think of how to articulate this without using too big of the techie terms when they use them. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. So, like, if you're like conducting a contextual inquiry, so you're observing users and their behavior, and you're observing them and you're watching what they're doing, and you're watching to see when they get frustrated, when they don't, things like that, which obviously is connected. It's all connected with the interaction design, but the overall user experience gives you more of it almost lets you report up to management about how people like it or not. So you can say, for example, our CIO, she won't care how many people clicked on a certain button or anything else. She just wants to know how many people were able to, perform the task we're wanting them to do, or sign up for something, for example. And she wants to know how many people signed up, and she wants to know, was it hard, yes or no? I mean, was it difficult for them to do, yes or no? She's not necessarily caring as much about the interaction design as much as the experience. I don't know if that helps clarify that for you there, Ian. But it's still, it's all muddy waters there, but it's one of those things where I think the reason that we have a hard time explaining it is because when you've been doing it for so many years, you kind of recognize the differences depending on the techniques you're using. But user experience is more qualitative, and usability is a little bit more quantitative when it comes to measurement and things like that. So the that's the simplest way of explaining it then.
I am Britta Menike, and I'm in graphic design. The question is, when applying and interviewing and looking into these jobs that are considered user experience or user design, do you have any tips? Do you have any tips or basically anything for suggestions on the process for interviewing?
I just went through it. All right, I'm not trying to be a Mike Hogg, but since I just applied and got hired at principal last March, I guess I'm the most recent guy who got hired into a position specifically for my role, which is I'm a lead user interface user experience designer. Big old fancy title. So going through that interview process was unique. First of all, I was lucky enough to have the background I had, where 12 years in a marketing firm, I had lots of portfolio examples. When I say portfolio examples, I don't mean screenshots of just web pages designs. I had wireframes that I had put together. I had research examples that I had done because, as Amy pointed out, I wasn't a one-man shop. I was working on a team with 8 to 10 other developers, and yes, I was helping guide their interaction interfaces and doing all the wireframes and things like that for them to help produce it, and then I would also help develop and produce content for it. So I was in a smaller firm like that, I was part of the entire life cycle of developing a website. But when it came to actually the interview process and things like that, it was not about, I mean, you can have URL examples, but you had to face up to the fact that you didn't build it yourself, and but what you could show is the work you did leading up to building that URL, and that's what was pivotal for them. I think it kind of wowed them because there was a big buzz about me coming on board, apparently, because I had a 30-page document of wireframes that I did for a big client, and it was when you're able to, and that was just one of the projects. So I handed like 3 different portfolio examples, but none of them were single pages. Here's a website with a URL on it. It was 30-page. Here are the wireframes and the process that led up to that iteration of building this interface. And then if you want to actually see the end result, here's the URL. And then I would list out, here's what I did as far as the project. Here's how I collaborated with the team. I just detailed out the whole process that we went through and put that as part of my portfolio example. And I think guys like Jared Spool and guys like that will say, you need to get a portfolio together. But guys like you're like, everybody's, what's the portfolio look like? Well, it's the process. Document your process, and that's your portfolio. Document what you've done on that project, and that's your portfolio. The irony is part of user experience is about telling the user story. If you can tell your own user story through that process, you won't have a problem getting a job. I mean, it also, other places quiz you and hey, look at this interface, tell me what's wrong. They want to see if you know your design principles, your Gestalt principles, and things like that. But if you can tell your project story and say, here's how we led up to building this, that's more impressive to somebody who really knows, if they really know what they're asking for, I should say, because I was lucky enough where principal already has a UX team, and so they knew what they were looking for. They knew they were trying to find somebody who knew how to tell that story. They weren't just looking for somebody with a fancy URL.
I would just add to that because I was just advising a developer today. 2 things. When I was a consultant, you have to think about what you're going to do when something's proprietary, and you're going to have to understand what you legally can take away. And again, it's just a matter of working around that, maybe, or when you're employed. Okay, yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that. The other thing, when you don't have the experience that Keith has, you have to start. Sounds bad. Okay, you have to still think in those terms. So maybe you don't have Keith's stellar experience, but you worked on XYZ project, and this is what I was advising someone just today. If someone compliments you, you go find your Word document or your email folder, wherever it is. You don't just work on your resume right before you apply for your job. You don't have to keep it all updated. I would advise you to keep it updated at all times, okay? But you don't have, I don't really do that. I used to, because that was my job, finding new jobs. You've got a place where you keep those emails where someone gave you a compliment, okay? Then you work backwards from that. You can't, you don't just present a compliment on your resume or when you're talking to someone. You're like, okay, what was the problem? What was the problem, and how did I solve it? Because that's how companies look at stuff. Not how talented you are, although they want you to be talented, obviously. Yeah, you've got to prove it. It's like, yeah, I'm great. Okay, prove it, and you will not remember. And it's easy for me to, you're not going to get this right now because everything's all fresh and new to you. But 6 months from now, you'll be working on some new project. And the reality is, the project that you're working on right now, that's just an assignment, probably applies to this in some way. So what was the, so somebody gave you a compliment, you save that email, you make notes if you have to, summarize your project after you're done. That's the other thing, because we're so excited that we just rolled out this scholarship application that's getting really good reviews. And I told the programmer, Han, here we got this nice compliment today, and work out the problem that we had and how you solved it, and put that down somewhere where you can go back to it. Because then what you're going to do is you're going to take that whole pile of documentation and you're going to do like what Keith did. Okay, what's the high level? What do I put on my resume? This is what I did. You don't put all the details on your resume, or people don't want to read all of that. Then people are going to ask you certain questions, and how can I work this into the answer? So if they ask you a question over here and you weren't quite prepared for it, how can you just kind of turn that and talk about something that you do want to talk about? And again, I'm kind of on my soapbox on this. When you're trying to get ready for a job interview, and I know you've got all kinds of resources here, but I remember, and I was doing some research or looking for peer sites or something, and I was out on Iowa's site, and they just have gobs of these short interviews where they're asking these, it's the School of Business, I think, at Iowa. I can't remember what the name is. And all these fantastic questions that actual CEOs were asking. So put yourself in somebody just asked you this crazy question, and how am I going to work that fabulous experience into my answer?
I think the answer is a little bit like a lot of the things that we've said, and that's to focus. Know your strengths and focus on those things, and make sure you can demonstrate that you do have those strengths. So I think the portfolio ties into that. That's the demonstrating your strengths. Be prepared to talk about, I did this and I did that, and here was the result, and focus on those results, and just show your best work. If that's a school project, show that. Show your best work. If you can, go get an internship or something like that. The more, quote, real experience you have, the better that will serve you. But again, if it's class projects and that's the best work you have so far, then show that and be proud of that.
My name is Chase Musel, and I'm a first-year HCI grad student. And I have a question pertaining to some of the tools that you may be using. So in the UX work that I see going on here, where you use a lot of eye tracking, or it seems to be a hot item as far as a tool to use. Are there any tools that you use on a regular basis, or is there something coming up that you would use that's exciting for your work?
Keith, I think you're the tool guy, so.
See what happens when you're kind of the young new guy, I guess. I'm not really that young, you guys, but anyway. So there are lots of different tools out there. It kind of depends on what you're going for. I mentioned the frameworks like Bootstrap and things like that. So if you're looking for doing quick design, that's one way to go. At Principal, I, within a few months, introduced Axure Rapid Prototyping. So using Axure at Principal makes a lot of sense. Their current state is they have an HTML framework, and we still utilize that, but they are big still into documentation. And so right now, if I whip something together in Bootstrap, then somebody else has to go take screenshots and annotate that thing. And as you know, if you used any of those tools in development, you can quickly change your prototype really fast, and now they have to go update all their documentation. Well, using Axure solved the problem of keeping our documentation in line with the prototypes without making it an insurmountable task of updating all that documentation and then Axure also lets you supply, you can put multiple forms of documentation in one prototype. So we can actually generate documentation that is for the business need, and then I can generate documentation for quality assurance for testing, and then I can generate documentation for training, and then I can even generate HTML prototypes with the documentations on annotations on there for the developers that don't want to flip through a 50-page Word document. So Axure's been really useful at Principal. It's not a new tool by any means, but it's just sometimes you got to find the right tool that meets the need and not necessarily pick up the most trendy tool that's out there. Because it's like I've been using Axure for 4 years and they never used it. And I brought it there, and all of a sudden there are people running around just begging for licenses right now. So you're like, okay, this is old, but it's new to them. So kind of that depends. Other tools, I'm big into social media, as you may have picked up. And, I'm journalism major at heart, right? I look at content marketing and content strategies as well. So I look for more tools of how to get the right content and to pick up on how to serve content to people. So I use a lot of trending tools and Google Analytics and things like that. Other new tools, the geek developer in me, there's like a new JavaScripts and jQuery plugins and things like that that I eat up. Like there's, it starts with it just rolled out this week. There's a new jQuery plugin that I can't even remember the name of it. I'm sure if I went out to my Twitter, I'd find it. But basically, it's a tracking type of tool that actually will track human or user behavior for you, and then spit out different div IDs or class IDs that you can use to alter your website based on user behavior. And so it's just like a plugin within the jQuery, using jQuery and things like that. And I'm like, hey, let's play around with that for a little bit. So the part of our job, I mean, we get to have fun too at work. We do a lot of project work, but we do get to have fun and just explore. We have what are called UX joint designs, and where we get together as a team, and it's just like, hey, nobody's brought up this problem, but we think this is a problem. Let's come up with a solution. And then for example, we saw a responsive web design need. Everybody was talking about responsive web design, but nobody was actually doing anything about it. So we just threw 3 weeks of work into it, and we're still doing our project work on the side, but we as a team pulled together. 3 weeks later, we had a full user experience for our participants, so people who log in. Here's a whole brand new user experience, and oh, by the way, it's responsive. And our team lead was able to take that, run it up, and show CIOs, senior VP people, and they're all buzzing about it. They're like, how do we get that? How do we go there? So now it's okay. Well, we need tools to get there. So sometimes the tools have to you have to drive the need before you find the tools. So, but yeah, I'm trying to think of anything other specific, but I named a few, obviously.
I think with tools, the thing is they're changing all the time. And so find the tools that work for you. So there's tons of graphics programs out there, HTML editing, eye tracking. You probably have a whole bunch of different choices there. So find the tools that work for you and use those. And then you get in a corporate environment, and we're with a financial services company, Keith and I. And so a big character of the company is risk aversion. And so everything's real conservative. New tools are like, okay, what are we going to do with this? And so it's great to have somebody who's always looking at the new tools. I was all about HTML and JavaScript and all that stuff when it was new. And I find that 15 plus years later that I'm not so keen on keeping up with every single tool that comes out, and it's just become overwhelming. And so I'm glad to sit next to Keith and listen to him talking about Bootstrap and social media and all that kinds of stuff. So you can't know it all. So hang out with people who know things that you don't know. And Keith's really into social media. I'm not, but I am much more into social media now than I was 10 months ago when Keith started. So learn from each other. Use the tools that work for you.
Okay, thank you. That's better. Okay. Just a little bit to add to that. I'm going to go back to the boring. I like to get back to one-on-one with human beings. I just want to mention this. I'm not sure if it's open to everyone. It should be open to students, but I'm not sure. We do have a WebSig group here at Iowa State. And I think it's just WebSig, but it didn't occur to me. I'm not sure if you guys, if it's students or employees, but I don't see why not. They put out a lot of tools. A lot of people will develop tools, track clicks or whatever. They're testing their website. They want to track clicks or whatever. That's free for all you guys to use. Also, they'll do webinars. I'm pretty sure they've had at least one user experience webinar in the past. And also you can float things by people in, there's like Drupal support and stuff like that. But we didn't use anything like that when we did our down and dirty usability testing on our last project. I'm just very much into scenarios. So I want to talk to people. I don't care if it's just a handful of people, and that's where I mine my data. So again, don't be afraid to sit down and talk to people. You'll get a lot of stuff. You get a lot of good scenarios to base your stuff on.
Question from me. What would you say is the most difficult or frustrating aspect of your current job?
I have to think about that one. I'm going to be PC on that.
You look like you're ready to jump in.
Past job, if you want to.
Yeah, well, I've been in my current job for 4 days now, so no, I'll speak in general. And I would say it's the politics that, this leader wants this, or somebody will say, well, no, we have to have this wording, or the users don't do that, they do this, and they're totally making it up, or they were a user 8 years ago, or whatever. And so you have to work with all these different people and competing personalities and different demands, and try to manage that all and somehow produce a great user experience out the other end. So I would say it's definitely politics and working with all the different people and all the different stakeholders and viewpoints.
So when I was at a marketing agency trying to do UX at a marketing firm, the turnaround there as far as projects go is extremely fast. Within 3 to 6 months you might have 2 to 3 websites that are going out the door. So frustration in the marketing agency, if a marketing firm is relatively small and they're saying they want a UX person, they really just want either a designer or a developer. They don't really want a UX person, because a UX person's going to need more time than they can provide from a budget or from even just a general timing standpoint to do the research to actually do your best work, which is part of the appeal of me going away from that into more of the corporate world, from that small firm to the corporate setting. I mean, I was lucky that they let me do the user research and wireframings that I did, but they were also starting to question if that was even worth it, because they were having a hard time getting clients to pay for it. And so, you know, I guess be leery depending on what kind of field. If you're looking to go in and turn out design after design and everything else, you know, marketing, look at agency life and consulting, and you know, that might be what you want to do for a while, and that's what I wanted to do for a while. And then I realized that I wanted to slow down and get a little bit more deeper into the strategy and have a little more time to think about my design elements and things like that. So that was in the past, and that principle, it's, you know, just growing the UX maturity model there, getting a lot of higher management to fund it and support it more is one of the big challenges there. So politics.
Yeah, politics. I know that kind of politics, and for some reason I thought when I came to a university setting that there wouldn't be politics, but there's politics there too, just a different kind. So I would say within that politics, it was a big surprise to me. The difference that I ran into was that here, one person can stand up and be touchy or throw a fit just because they want some attention and just hang up the whole project. I was not prepared for that. Yeah, that's it. I had these stars in my eyes. Oh, these people in higher education, you know, they're going to be with me on this. And part of that, okay, is my problem. If they don't understand what user experience is in a large corporation, if some people have a hard time understanding what that is, they really don't get that here. And that was one of the things that I ran into. They thought when we did this big web redesign of the college site, that's what we started with, the overall college site, that we were just going to convert content page for page. And I was like, oh no, we're not. And then that's a time element. It's not just that they get that extra thing of the usable website. There's a lot of time, and they were not prepared for that. You know, they had all of these things in their laundry list of the person they wanted to do, but they weren't quite up to putting their money where their mouth was. And so that's one of the hits they took, is that things did not get rolled out as fast. And the part that was I need to do better, and maybe you can learn from my experiences, I still have a hard time with my elevator description of what it is I do. I'm more like, hey, I'm good at what I do. Just trust me, and we're going to have this awesome site. And I still need to work on that, because I walked into a room, plus there's the whole money and budgeting problems that you're having at the university right now. And you know, if they just let somebody go, here we just hired a new person to do our website, we don't need a new website. It really wasn't till I actually sat down and would work with these people. Okay, I'm going to get all in your business, and I want to know what it is you're doing, and why do you need to know these things? And it's true that they really don't understand what's going on until the website's done, and they're like, oh, wow, this is awesome, now I get it. Well, that's how many months later? And so I still need to work on that, and so I challenge you to work on that. For a while, there was this thing that was stuck in my head. There was a commercial a long time ago, and I can't even remember the company. It was, we don't make all the products that you're familiar with, we make them better. That was kind of my philosophy, but I still need to perfect that.
And in the elevator speech, we're all just web designers, right?
That's what I tell people.
It's easier.
That's what I tell people. It's on my card.
Yeah, but when you say that, then all you do is design, and you don't care about content or words or anything else. So be careful with that one.
I have another question. In the movie industry, they use storyboarding. Do you guys have any need to do that? Is it a good thing to use? A nice tool?
From my experience, when trying to do animation or show any type of interaction animation type of deal, then yes, storyboarding's great. Part of the reason that I've helped steer principal towards Axure is so that I can just do interactive and show interaction in the prototyping. So prototyping has become more of the kind of standard, which is why I like Bootstrap and Zerb's Foundation and things like that. Those I think a lot more people want to see the interaction anymore than the storyboards. But storyboards still are used if you're working on video content or like CSS3 animation type of deal. If you're trying to explain that, you know, storyboarding still is very relevant. Just seems that as far as user interface goes, they just want to see a prototype anymore if you get beyond the wireframing type of phase. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I've used storyboarding very informally, more just sketching things out to understand processes that, hey, we've got these users and they're going through this kind of stuff. And so it's kind of half flow chart, half storyboard. It's more put a personal face on how this process really works, because we tend to think, oh, well, you got to log into the website and then once you get that in, then you see this screen and so on and so forth, and it's all about all these screens. Well, there's somebody out there using that, and so storyboarding helps put the person back in, and so that's a useful thing. So yeah, they're useful. They take time, so you have to weigh the benefits versus the cost of doing that, but still useful. Just find the right situation.
Hello, my name is Zach. I'm a first-year HCI grad student, and my question is, contrary to Hannah's question, what aspect you like the most about your current job?
Yeah, I really enjoy the chance to streamline things to make them efficient. And so my first project in this new job is to redo a website, and it's going to be, okay, we're going to fix this little piece here and fix that there. But one of the things I know that's going to happen along the way is we're going to eliminate half of the content, more or less. And so making things simpler and easier and less complicated, I'm going to be excited by that. And that's, you know, 6,000 to 8,000 messages I'm not going to get about your content has expired. You need to review this, and so on and so forth. So,
since we care so much about users, like, I guess the thing that inspires me is when I actually make people happy. Like, you know, like I mentioned earlier, my usability testing in Chicago with mobile and getting the reactions of, I mean, we don't get me wrong, it wasn't all unicorns and rainbows, but it was you know, getting some surprising reactions and seeing your design work, not because you did the design, it was a team effort to come up with a design, but seeing people actually find it useful, it's very rewarding. And then also just all the opportunities you get to interact and collaborate with people. I like people, so therefore I like working with people, and that's very rewarding. You know, I come from the philosophy of everything I design is just terrible and ugly, but if everybody else can live with it, I'll let it slide to production type of deal. I'm never happy with what I do, but if it makes other people happy, then I'll let it slide. That's kind of my take on things.
I am really enjoying my job here at ISU. I was telling Dan, even on the worst days, I love it here. And I guess what I like the most, I've been here, did I say this before? I'm going on 3 years now. I originally thought I was going to be here for a year. Now I'm going on 3 years, 4 for sure. My favorite things are, this is my way of helping people. So it's sort of more of the same. This is the way I help people. Some people cure sick people. Some people teach children. This is my way of helping people. And so the people I'm helping are students, current students and prospective students. Those are our number 1 and 2 audiences. I want to help them find what they need to get whatever it is done that they need to get done. And the second part I like is promoting the college. I am really proud to work for College of Human Sciences, and I'm glad to be part of the communications office that gets the word out about them. And so a couple of examples of when that really came through. I'm just happy to be able to do it, but when other people understand what I'm doing, that's even better. And I remember I was in a meeting with the dean and her group, I can't remember what the group of students was called, Dean's Student Advisor Group, let's say. The dean wanted me to present the new website to the students, but we had rolled out several sites by that time, but she just wanted a presentation. So I gave the presentation, and my next mode is always, give me some feedback. I always want the feedback, and that's just another version of the information you're going to get with even the techie tools that you'd like to use. You want some feedback. You have a thick skin. And it just unbidden, all these compliments came, and I remember one student saying, I have to do the arm gestures. It makes me so proud of my program. And I was like, ching, because we were right there with the dean, and so that was a real high point. And even with, I keep talking about this scholarship, I'm still pumped about this scholarship application. At this time last year, around Valentine's Day, when the deadline is for getting in those scholarship applications, I still in my mind have this vision of actual fires in our office. We were having such horrible, horrible problems. Students were actually coming into the communications office, and we were actually stepping through their scholarship applications with them. And now we've just turned it around, so it's all online. It doesn't just completely crash if you're doing it on a Mac. They can save it. They can come back to it later. And it's just, I'm just loving all the compliments right now. I'm riding that wave right now.
Yeah, I think I want to get a scholarship here, so maybe I'll try that out. Valentine's Day deadline. Okay, so I'm going to change my answer. I really like user research, and so really the most fun I have at work is when I do user research and find out something I never would have guessed. So, for example, I was working on a document storage application last year and went out and did some guerrilla testing, and I think I did 4 or 5 people, and all 4 or 5 said, I would replace this. I need to replace this version of the document. Like, I wasn't using the word replace. That's really interesting. And so I was all excited that, hey, I learned that the people who actually use this use the word replace. They don't use add or update or edit or anything like that. They use the word replace. So that's what the app says now.
I think we have time for one more question.
I think most of the things that we've talked about so far have been like web development or app development. Do you see somebody who's a user experience designer being able to do like a product development and doing kind of the same thing for like a product?
I believe you said you were an industrial designer, right? Yeah. I think a lot of the skills apply where you still need to talk to people and interview people and watch people use the product and all those kind of things. And so all those people and research skills are still going to apply. With the web, there's sort of this somewhat limited way of interacting with things. And it's a lot less restricted now than it was when I first started. But when you've got a product that you can flip over and open and touch and press and spin and whatever you can do with it, then that opens up a whole bunch of new things. You know, buttons that actually push instead of just look like they push. That's a different thing. And so there's a lot of stuff that carries over the same skills and that sort of thing. But then as far as producing those, I wouldn't have any idea how to go about, you know, actually building a smartphone. You know, I would probably do better designing some of the software and that sort of thing. But okay, where do we put buttons and that sort of thing? Well, but I could still go watch users and find, oh, if we put the button here, that isn't working for them. And so, or they don't understand this kind of switch or whatever. We need to do something different. And then I would probably say, what's Apple doing? But anyway, you learn from your competitors. So a lot of the skills carry over. Others you would have to learn or find your partners in crime to kind of fill in those skills that you don't have.
Yeah, I can confirm that. I can't really talk. I actually did some product development for a client, but I can't talk about that. But what I can say is, yeah, user-centered analysis, user-centered design, all those principles still apply. The exact same research techniques and design principles and techniques still apply, whether it's a web or if it's a physical, tangible thing. And the testing involved in that, obviously. I mean, obviously, sometimes it's harder to gather some of the data when you're trying to test. So, you know, you end up doing multiple prototypes instead of just one and hoping that one goes to plan. Because unlike a web, you know, for example, mobile test, you know, our icons, our bottom navigation icons weren't working great. Well, we swapped them out with another set really quick. Well, you know, if it's a physical thing and, you know, you're trying to figure out button placement, you're going to have 2 or 3 other prototypes sitting aside to go, okay, this is plan B if plan A is not going very well. And so there's a little more time into it, but, you know, if you're good with origami or cardboard or even paper mache, you can put together something. And chicken wire, I can't even tell you all the stuff we used. Anyway, it's like a lot of stuff, but it is very much similar principle. They don't call it user experience, they call it product design. I mean, that's just, but they're using the same techniques we do.
Yeah, I'd just take it one step further, make it even more general, and go on that building metaphor. You know, if you were an architect and you were going to build a house for somebody, I would hope you wouldn't be building a house without consulting with the family that was going to live there. I mean, you could think, oh, I've lived in a lot of houses. I think I can do this on my own. It's about the same thing. You know, you just have got to go talk to people and don't just skim the surface. Just dig down in there and find out what they're doing, what's important in their lives, and this all just applies to probably any product as well.
Can we have a big round of applause for our panelists? And I think they're available to stick around for a couple more minutes if you guys want to talk to them individually. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.